sometimes the sites that I've developed and you walk on, you just go instant attraction, ball, and you're buzzing straight away because you're like, this is it. And the agent's going, yeah, that's it, right? And it's all, you're buzzing from the start, and then you start planning this whole thing in your head, and you're mapping it out, and you're drawing it in your head and everything like that. And then there's other sites you walk on, like the one I've just got now. I walked on, I said, I like this. And then you're like, but you feel like you've got to actually still work with it instead of getting that instant excitement. And I went back there like 3 or 4 times, and then one of the agents is like, Matt's like, and I said, no, this is what I want to do. This is what it's going to look like, and this is the end product, and this is what I want to sell it for.
So Justin, episode 2, mate, what a good segue.
Have we really started already?
Have we started? We're on, brother. So I got some great feedback from the first session. Yeah. Some people said that it was very inspiring and very motivating, and they're very excited for this journey. And I'm excited for this session because you wanted to go in at the start of this session and talk about everything and give everything away because that's your nature. And you were like, okay, what are we talking about today? And I said, well, we said we were going to talk about just location today. And then you told me, but location, it's only got so much in it. And
it's got a lot in it, but it's a smaller topic that I'll talk about.
Yeah, the irony is, fast forward 45, 50 an hour from now, you'll still be talking. So
talking about location.
Yeah, and then we'll need to do another session after this about location part 2 because you didn't get enough out in location 1. So I look forward to going deep on location in this session. And let's kick it off with a little bit of a story. Why not? How did you select your most recent location? Because you just acquired one, if I'm correct.
Yeah, and it seems to be, well, at the moment, on the coast, as you all know, I do like Wamberal. Wamberal's a broader sort of, it's a decent sized suburb, surrounded by beaches, surrounded by good suburbs as well, I think is important. Like I've developed a lot in Max before, which is a lot better to do now. Beautiful suburb, a little bit isolated, a little bit exclusive, and now it's going through the roof. Pearl Beach, very similar. So on the Central Coast, just in particular for this part of the topic, Wamberal for me. So like Wamberal, Terrigal is funny.
Yep.
Terrigal's only got a couple of good streets in it. But Terrigal's good for R1 sites. Obviously R1 sites are a lot easier to do.
What's an R1 site?
So an R1 site, which has changed, the LEG's changed a little bit now, but an R1 site is a site that you can go on and do a multi-dwelling on. So 2 duplexes, 3 duplexes if the site's big enough. But the regulations and the LEP and the guidelines are a lot easier process to do a multi-dwelling or a drill lock. Mm-hmm. There's not many of them on the coast. Mm-hmm. Terrigal's probably got the most of them. Mm-hmm. And then parts of East Gosford, obviously. Mm-hmm. R2 sites, 80% of the coast. Mm-hmm. But the LEP just changed at the end of last year where it gives you a lot more flexibility to do dual locks or multi-dwellings on R2 sites, depending on the lot size, 550, 700, detached, joined, either or. But for me, at the moment, Wamberal's my favourite. As you can tell, 80% of them have been done there. But there's also criterias and, streets in Wamberal that I'll only touch. And to me, they've got to be like you're on the waterfront, but you're not. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a long answer for that question. We're probably already.
You know what the irony is? We didn't actually get to the answer. So
what was the question again?
The question was, before I frame up what this whole session is really going to dig into, I want to know what made you select your current location that is in
I
Womble.
just told you what.
Okay. Can you just like
The current location. Well, this one's an acreage, and
cool.
it's obviously there's a couple of good acreage streets in Womble, Serpentine, Brush Road. There's probably 3 or 4 that I'd buy in there. Obviously, location, positioning of the street.
Mm-hmm.
I'm right at the end, last one, next to the mountain. So yeah, that's the reason why I bought this one. And then obviously there's a lot of other factors that come into it, such as price, getting a good deal on it, blah blah. But the end of the street, the back of the house where all the action happens and where your property runs is east facing, northeast. So sun's coming over you the whole time, and that's very important on this spot because the mountain's right to the left, right to the next door to you. But there's no, you know, you can go on an acreage site and that guy can build on that boundary and that guy builds right next to each other. There's no point in having acreage. Really, when I see that, I'm like, what's the point of buying acres? But this one's on its own, no neighbours around you. So yeah, that's the location of this one. But Womble for me is a top suburb to do developments up here on the coast.
That's pretty cool. You've got your location you like, you've got acreage, you're not next to Mr. Joe, and it's east facing. So it's a cracker spot. So today's session we are talking about location. What we are talking about is location. Okay. So we're talking about where to buy, what to buy. We're talking about everything that is around site acquisition.
Yep.
Okay.
Reasons, yeah.
And
reasons for site acquisition.
So that you ultimately don't buy a acreage on top of someone. You don't buy an acreage that's potentially west facing.
Generally, someone who's buying an acreage is buying it for privacy. That's
no
That's
brainer.
the reason why I've got mine.
No brainer.
And I don't see anyone, but that's the whole point of it. So yeah.
And you live on an acreage as well.
We live on an acreage.
Yeah, we've talked about that a few times. So, all right. And it's in Max.
It's in Max.
Hey, you do what you say you're going to do. So I like it. So let's start this session. You know, I like to start the session with emotion and motivation because it gets people bought in, it gets people excited, and it makes sense on what we're really covering. So let's start with the positive stuff, right? Let's start with all the good motivation. Talk to me about the good stuff, right? So when I say good stuff, I'm talking about like what developers desire in a location. What are the desirable aspirational motivations? Like what are the things that are very toward motivating when we're talking about site allocation or location.
So like reasons for it?
Yeah, like positive reasons, like inspire, like motivational reasons. And then we'll eventually go into more the negatives, and then we'll start to talk strategy.
So for me, when I'm looking for a location, I find it exciting. Sometimes you'll probably have to go through, myself, I'll go through lots of homes before the actual one that works or ticks all the boxes or close enough to actually comes up. So that's exciting, that's driving around trying to find the right site. You're contacting all the agents, or in my case, I've just got McGrath that I use all the time, and what's out there, and they're feeding you, and then you're going to look at this one, you're going to look at that one, you're comparing them all, then you're quickly rushing back to the office, and then you're chucking in your FISO. But finding the site, I guess when you go in there and you're trying to, number one, you stand at the front of the site, what's the attraction like when you drive up the street? Where is it located in that street? I think is hugely important. Like, some streets, I've developed in, and I wouldn't develop down that end of it. You know what I mean? But I'll develop up that end of it. But there's heaps of motivation and excitement in going to find a site because there's not many of them. It's like, it's probably, for me, I reckon, is the hardest part is finding the right site.
So I've devoted a whole session to this.
Yeah, that is definitely the hardest part. It's like the most time consuming. Then sometimes you think to yourself, oh my God, is there actually one out there? I've gone through 50 before I've said, yeah, this is the one we can work on. And then you work on it and it doesn't even work. So yeah, definitely the hardest part. But obviously fun does drive you, and it just makes you attack. And when you start not finding the site. See me, I don't want to have gaps in between the developments. And that's the bit that scares me the most is, shit, am I going to be stale for 4 months?
Because time's money, right?
Time's money, and doing nothing's boring. So that's the part that freaks me out the most. So finding sites is super, super hard.
Super, super hard, super, super important, but you get a lot of joy and fun out of doing it,
Yeah,
correct?
so it's probably the hardest challenge.
Talk to me about the excitement of you going out there, you're hustling for sites, you're trying to find some, you can't find many, but then you find one. Like, just talk to me a little bit more about the excitement of going out there and doing you, like just trying to find.
Sometimes they're different. Sometimes the sites that I've developed and you walk on, you just go instant attraction, boom. And you're buzzing straight away because you're like, this is it. And the agent's going, yeah, that's it, right. And it's all, you're buzzing from the start, and then you start planning this whole thing in your head, and you're mapping it out, and you're drawing it in your head and everything like that. And then there's other sites you walk on, like the one I've just got now. I walked on, I said, I like this. And then you're like, but you feel like you've got to actually still work with it instead of getting that instant excitement. And I went back there like 3 or 4 times, and then one of the agents is like, Matt's like, and I said, no, this is what I want to do. This is what it's going to look like, and this is the end product, and this is what I want to sell it for. Yeah, righto, sweet. And then when he starts getting excited, then you start getting excited. So this one I started getting excited towards the end of it, and then before you know it, it's like you're exchanging on it, and then boom, it's just, it all happens really quick. So there's some different emotions around it. There's ones that hit you straight away, there's ones you got to build up to. As long as they work and you can create the design that you want on that particular development, then that's when the excitement starts there.
So that's a pretty, So that's a pretty motivating part of the process. Like I know we're not going too deep, or we're not going into creation today, but finding a site is part of the creation process because it opens up the doors, right? Yeah. So, and something you've said...
Everything, like obviously this one's an acreage, which is exciting because it's the first real acreage development, which I've sort of wanted to do for years. I know I've got some big acres that I'll be doing something on, but that's for me. For someone else, first one, so that's exciting. But yeah, shape of blocks. If it's not acreage, shape of blocks... same thing. I've had to, with this one, you've got bushfire. I wouldn't be doing it if it was bow 40 or bow FZ. Just wouldn't happen. I've got it down to bow 29 and bow 19 on the other side. So it doesn't matter if it's bow 12 and a half, bow 19. If you don't know about bushfire, I don't know why they call it this, but bow 12 and a half, bow 19, bow 29, they're all the same. So as long as you're in that bracket, your build's the same. So, location creates all these problems as well. Flooding, so is your site elevated? You don't want to be on a flood site because your regulations are a lot stricter. You got to lift your floors, and you go, oh shit, I got to lift my floors for 100 mil. That's going to cost me 100 grand. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So let's turn to the negatives. Okay, so we've talked about the good stuff on the journey. What about the problems? So actually, I want to stress the point first. First point before we go into the problems with site location, and then we'll get to the good stuff like strategies. Problem is, well, before we get to the problem, what you've mentioned a lot is, and you said it before, I go through so many options before I actually find something I like. Most people wouldn't go through that DD process. They would just go, looks all right, I'm just going to put in an offer and we'll go for it, me included. I've done that a lot, right? You're quite meticulous. You're like, I'm going to find this place, and if it takes me 3 months, I'll be frustrated because I want to find something, but I will do everything I can to find something, and I will find something. And you've said to me a few times, it might be 40, 50, 80, 100 locations before you get one that you fall in love with. How important is that, firstly, to go out there and be invested in this process of finding right site?
Oh, it's super important. It takes so much time away from me. When you're looking for a site, you're like, we've got a business to run here as well, but my main business, obviously,
is the business of developing.
But at the end of the day, it takes a lot of time away. You get a phone call, mate, this site here, come over looking for anyone else's. Bang, you're up. Like, I'll get up and I'll go and drop everything to go look at that. Doesn't matter what's happening. Just take off, go, make sure I get first dibs on it, make sure I've got 48 hours to see if it works. It takes a lot of time for me, especially when you're in funny markets. Like at the moment, things are popping up. When the market's hot, which is great for selling, man, it's like they want 2.5 for it. All right, so 2.5 works. Next thing they come back and they go, no, they want 3, because the market's that nuts that it's just creating all this, oversupply, selling for way above the price, and that's a hard market. That's the one where you really jump. Yeah, it's good to sell, but you're racing around everywhere because everyone's just jacking the deal up on you.
Good market right now.
Good market to buy right now. But at the end of the day, I've always said if you have the right product in the right location,
which you did,
I think you can sell what you want in any market, because that person will want to buy the house regardless. And with us, we're staying in the higher end lane, so the market shouldn't dictate what the prices are with them. But yeah, it is time consuming, but you got to get out and do it. If, you might go for 40 sites and go, oh, I'm not going to do it this week, and then that site's in there and you miss it.
Yeah,
absolutely. You miss it, someone else is doing it and you ain't doing it.
You just lost a couple of $1 million.
Hopefully.
If you do site acquisition correctly.
Yeah.
And have a good creation process,
feasibility,
and a good team, and all these other things we talked about. Okay, talk to me about the problems. Like the problems, like
associated with the location.
Yeah, the problems, the negatives, and not so. Yeah, just the bad stuff, like the bad motivations, the things that go wrong that are stressful and overwhelming and can screw things up and cause location. Just location. Yeah, and then we're going to start to move towards things you can do, which is the intel.
Obviously stressful finding the place, finding the right site. That like I said, that all revolves around that. It takes a lot of time, can be stressful. But then when you find them, then you've got say you might find a site and you're like, yes, this block's great. Wish it was 20 houses that way. Like, I mean, especially if you talk about like Grove Road, Hilltop, sort of old gossip, but it's a bit lower end, but these streets that run the same way towards the beach in Wamberal, if you develop up this end near the golf course, which I've done Hilltop and we broke that street record, or you develop, and if that house was 200 metres this way, I would have got like $500,000 more. Like 200 metres, literally. If I was like under house 30, like 1 to 30, I would have got $500,000 more.
Wish I'd have known this when I bought in Rysdale.
Yeah,
I probably missed the street.
Probably should have went the street before and you made some cash.
Yeah, sweet. Well, I didn't do my site acquisition right because I got too impatient.
So yeah, that part's crucial. And then sometimes you got to go, right, well, I got to reduce the build cost a little bit more, and we'll aim for this figure. It might not be as much bread in there, but if you do it right, you can still make the strategy make you money.
Getting sites wrong, like, and really drumming this point home. What's the negative impact that it causes? You can go any way you want. Like,
getting sites wrong can cause a massive impact.
Okay, talk to me a little bit about that.
So getting sites wrong can, you talk about obviously going in to make a couple of bucks. Well, getting sites wrong will make you lose a couple of bucks, and a lot quickly. So that's, if you can get over that part, that's the part that's scary. Obviously, I've lost money on a big one with some people. Big one. Probably a few years ago, super big. Biggest one still to date, even bigger than McGee. It's like 30 luxury units, but that's when you get surrounded by vultures and people try and take your money. So, but you can substantially lose a lot of money, like a lot.
This is a super important point, and we need to stay here for a little bit. Okay, reason being is because I think a big reason people don't develop is because of the scare factor, the fear factor, and I think it's usually revolving around this. So let's acknowledge it, let's talk about it, and then we can start to jump into ways to mitigate that happening. So talk to me more about this.
So obviously 100%, I think the most daunting part about anything in business, or especially developing, is that you can lose, you can make great gains, but you can lose a lot of money at the same time. That's why strategy, location, all these things are so crucial. You're going to make a lot of mistakes at the start. Sometimes, like we delved in, maybe, I don't know, it was the right site, but I guess, experience around that type of site. I could do it with my eyes closed now, but experience around that type of site when people are jacking interest rates up, like you can get hit. So within 3 months, interest rates can change, not like just housing ones that are going up 0.25% every 3 months. Your development deals can go from 10% to 18% in 1 day. So when you're doing your feasibilities based around, so you do a big site that might be, in particular, this one was a 2-site acquisition next to each other, and then a 13 luxury apartment development, and then TDC, which is total development cost, might be, I don't know, 9 million or something, more, 10. And then all of a sudden you're going around trying to run around and you've done an option on it, you're doing all your lending on it, and then people are hitting you with 18 to 20%. That's it's not going to work, but that's the way finance went just strict. It was probably the worst time to develop. So timing is absolutely critical in the type of development you're going to do. And yeah, all of a sudden you've lost $500,000, $1 million or whatever it is, and it just goes quickly, and then you're like, shit, you got to work hard to get it back. So you got to make sure you're in the position, I guess, to lose the money, if you know what I mean. It's like if someone goes, what do they say about stocks? I don't do them because I don't know enough about them, and shares, I only put down what you are able to actually lose. So I think that's important. Probably at that time back then, it wasn't the right time to lose it, but then you just fight back and go for it. So yeah, you've got to get your strategy right, because it can go like that. And then you've got to fulfill the development. Like, so not lucky, but other options happened, and then we got burned again and then burned again. But things could have been worse. But if you go through the development and you run out halfway through a development, then not only have you run out and you're not going to make any money, but that person who's doing the back end finance of that is going to come and repossess that house off you, or that development off you, and they're going to on-sell it, and they're going to hit you with fees, and they're going to hit you with court fees, and then don't want to scare.
No, but it's look, I appreciate you opening up about it, mate, because but I appreciate it, because at the end of the day, this is what is in the back of their mind with why they're not developing. And so
if you've got a family out, you're going to say, look, lost all this money, we're going to have to...
Correct. It's fucking super stressful, and I haven't been through it, but you have, and I think a lot of people are feared by that, and so we need to sort of raise the light on it a little bit.
Yeah.
So no, it's negative, mate, but you got to address the good stuff, the exciting stuff, but you also got to look at the negative.
You got to be prepared for ups and downs. If you ain't prepared to go up and down, don't do it.
Yeah, and we obviously want to help these guys as much as we can, in particular throughout this whole process, not have downs, right? Because like you said, you can...
But life's full of up and downs.
It is,
so
100%.
If you've got a smooth sailing life, stay on it. If it's just nice and straight and no bumps, well, show me what that life's like. But yeah, you got to be prepared to go up and down. Look, I've always said there's probably more downs than ups, but you just make those ups a lot bigger.
Yeah, and you've learned from your downs, and you could, like quote you before, you could do this with your eyes closed now.
Yeah, I had that same one. I wish I did, to be honest. But it even ended up being done. We designed it. We did the whole thing. You spent so much time on it, and it ended up working for this person that it shouldn't have worked for. But anyway.
And so if you listen to everything in these episodes, you won't need to sell and lose all this money, right? So listen. Mate, let's
learn from your mistakes, don't you?
You do. So learn.
Haven't made one since yet.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from your mistakes so that I don't make them, right? And I need that, because I've made some mistakes in other ways. So, mate, let's start to move into strategy, right? Like when you're looking at the right location, whether it's an acreage, whether it's a block that you're going to put however many units on, what do you believe are the 5 or so key strategies or key principles that these guys need to adhere to? And then we'll go a little bit deep on each one.
Well, what I look for, it depends on the development. If we're just talking about, say, a luxury home, let's just say I was going to do a nice luxury home, right? Because everything's different. When you start to move up to multi-dwellings or apartments, everything changes. It's like you got to adhere to so many council things, that you got to do. You got council contributions, you got heaps of things. So we're just talking about a luxury home. Obviously, the location that we're talking about now, positioning of that property or that block in that particular street or location. Sun.
Positioning sun. Yeah.
Like everyone goes, oh, I've got a front of the house. This is what I find funny. Everyone goes, "Oh, my house is north facing." You don't swim around your pool on your front deck. I don't mind a house where the backyard is north to east facing, because that's where your entertainment is, that's where your pool usually is, that's where your deck usually is. So I like I like it the other way around. So, you know, you walk in your front door, you open the door, that's your north facing. But east is cool because the sun will sort of come over. But yeah, positioning of the sun, privacy is probably number one. The amount of people that come to buy a development or, you know, come and look at it when it's halfway through construction, want to know how private, number one, how private is this house going to be? Is that neighbour looking at me? That's huge. So we try and design the house, especially if it's a residential luxury home, to be super private, wherever you are in that house. If you don't want to be on your back deck when that bloke's back deck's there looking at you. So privacy and shape of the block. You know, like obviously then you can, you know, shape of the block is very important. You know, how am I going to be, is this going to be a long skinny home? Is it going to be square? Is it, you know, is it big enough? I don't like the develop. I've looked at so many that are about 500 square meters. I don't like that. You know, we're not in Sydney. We're on the Sunshine Coast. So realistically, who's going to want to be buying a 500 square meter block? But there's a lot of them here. So that's important. Yeah, so you can get your design right, but then obviously things flow into other things. You know, has it got a view? That they're all additional things that'll determine end sale price. Like, am I doing this one because it's got a beautiful view? So, you know, there's numerous things with a site. You know, getting a geotech report, what's underneath, you know.
So let's recap those. So we've got positioning.
Yep.
Positioning is the first one. Second one.
Man,
we're testing now, no, mate.
Okay, so positioning, privacy,
positioning for double P. Yep.
Privacy, shape of the block.
Yep.
What was the other ones? They're the main ones.
Also the size of the block.
Yeah, size of the block, which is, you know, sort of shape and everything. So size, dimensions of the block, and then, like I said, then you move into other topics like what's its attraction? Does it have a view? The sun. Sorry, the sun was the other one.
Okay.
So sun, they're the probably sun, privacy, shape or size of the block, and your design that you can do, and the location in that street or that area. They're probably the most important things, I think. But that's coming from a buyer that's buying a view.
Yeah.
They're the things that they will ask, you know, when they see your design on paper and you haven't built it or whatever.
They're beautiful. So now we've got the key focuses, key principles, key strategies. Let's start to isolate each one, mate. I know you elaborated quite nicely before on the sun, but do you have anything else on the sun? Like, that's an important point. It's a really super important point.
So in a street, generally the Sunshine Coast, as you're down at your minor, isn't dead straight. Right, streets aren't dead flat. You know, most of the streets like here will sort of, generally people prefer to be elevated. So if you get a street that's up and down, I know it might not sound that crucial, but it is. People prefer the elevation. Not being in the bottom or the dip of the street.
Yep.
Obviously flood and, you know, fire obviously impact those things and that as well. But if we just stay on the topics that we said, sun, you want to have sun around your property at least. You know, you might have 50,000 trees around you or whatever, but you want to have sun like 70% of the day. All right, from when it rises to when it sets, you probably want to have sun 70% of the day. So you design your development based around the movement of that sun. That's why if you've got a good architect who will show you where the sun goes and where the sun's going to come through the windows, and then you design all your windows around it. That's another, but this is on location. Like when we sold McGee, she was like, I feel like this house is going to be dark. I'm like, nah. We've designed this whole thing around views and sun. Now they come in and they go, wow, it's super light. But that all comes back to the design aspect. Size of the block and shape.
Can I stop you there for a sec? There's an important point in that, and I want to make sure we cover it. Obviously, we're not really talking about design today. We're talking about location. But when you're getting a location, is it critical to have a designer of some caliber with you that can work with you to understand the sun?
Well, I'll never settle on a site or anything until I've given it to my architect that I use all the time, Dave.
Okay.
So I'll go bang. First thing I'll do is, Dave, here's the site. He looks at the link. He looks at a few guidelines and regulations for me. So it's super helpful. Any council things we need. Obviously, this acreage site has a lot of acreages, and rural are a lot more harder because they've got certain aspects around environmental that you've got to abide by. So I give it to him. He goes, "Yeah, it's a good site. All right, I'll meet you out there."
Yeah, cool.
Bang. This is what I want to do. This is the design, and then we go on to the next phase. But yes, definitely, 100%.
Okay,
I'll not buy it without showing Dave.
Yeah, good point.
And then what was it there? Privacy. Privacy is super important. You don't want people looking through your windows. You want to be out, around your pool with your kids when no one can see you. Right, so you got to make sure you position the pool on the right side of the house, or cover it with plants, or just shape that. You want to be out in your balconies enjoying it, no one's seeing you. So it's very hard to do when you've got, generally you've got 3 houses around you minimum all the time. So that's crucial. So the same thing, I've always said design's number one in my eyes in development, and everything revolves around that. So everything just will push into that. The location will help with the design, the price. It all pushes into one thing.
Correct.
All right. So
that's a really important point. That's why I asked that point before around getting the designer into the location assessment, because if the moving parts aren't talking to one another from the start, then you got an issue. Because if you've got the design but you don't have the location right in terms of what the designer can work with, then there's a hindrance. Yep. So those respective parts of the model.
How many sites I bought with the DA, I'm not buying it because of the design they've come up with. I'm changing that design.
Yeah, sure.
But I only buy it with the DA because it just cuts down so much time with the council in Central Coast, which is, sorry council, but it's true, is this probably the slowest council in New South Wales at putting out DAs. So, but when I see that design, I'm like, no, I'm not building that. We're going to redesign it. So, but you can start, you can get your CC and you can still start and get the processes ticking and then do the design in the background.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So where were we? We done the sun?
About all that
done
stuff.
The sun?
You asked a new question.
No, we're not all done yet.
No, on that question.
The sun bit. But what was the second part?
I did it, privacy.
We were all good with privacy. You happy with privacy?
Yeah.
Yes, the sun, privacy. Third, shape. We haven't talked about shape.
I'm sure we talked about it.
I want to talk more about it. Let's talk more about shape.
Well, shape goes back to design as well. Look at 2 different blocks. You get a 1,000 square metre block. One might have a 14 metre frontage and it might be 17 metres long. You're not doing a duplex there. You do back to back, you're still not doing that either because you need a 3 metre driveway. So that duplex isn't happening. So it's going to be a luxury site. It's going to be a long home. 1,000 square metre site, 22 by, say 40. You got a nice big square block, 22 metre frontage. Big chance if it's in the right spot, you can do a duplex. Side by side. I believe that side by side duplexes, I would never do back to back like old school townhouses.
Yeah.
So that's going to determine the development that you're actually going to do. And then not only that, you've got to look at the steps down the development. Is that site logistically going to be hard to build because it's so thin, I've got no room to move around.
Or it's on a hill.
Yep. So yeah, exactly. Do I need to put 5 retaining walls in my backyard to create flat areas, which everyone wants?
Yep.
So yeah, shape and the size of the block is very, very important.
Can I add another one to this that I'd like to talk about?
If you want.
What about like surface? So not just shape, but
What size got grass on it?
Sorry?
What, grass?
No. Like, let's say you've got a really bad surface. You've got really bad earthwork. You got a really bad nature of the land. How hard that can be, because obviously that's hit a lot of people where they've gone in, they thought that it was workable land.
Well, that's where you but it's only going to be under the ground. Obviously, what's on top doesn't matter because you scrape all that back.
Not under the ground. It's open, yeah.
And that's where you go do your due diligence and you go pay some extra bucks and you go get a geotech report done. Even if council doesn't ask that as a requirement, if you're doing a development and you're digging underground, you might not be doing it. If you're not digging it, if you're going in and doing a renovation development and you're not digging, who cares?
Yeah.
No one cares. No one matters.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do a new development and you're digging, you have to go get that geotech report. You've got to go pay that $5,000 or $6,000 to do 4 holes or 3 holes in critical areas of that development. So where your footing's going to go, where your basement's going to go, where your pool's going to go.
Yes.
And you've got to get them done.
Yes.
And then that will tell you how hard it is going to be to pull that material out of the ground.
Yep.
If you don't do that, well, you'll find out when you start digging.
And that can cost lots and lots. And
it's the most expensive part of the ground is in the ground. Like if you're going deep down in there and you're bulking out, tons and tons of stuff. Sometimes you need a saw to get in there. We've hit it a few times, but we knew we were going to hit it. So we're prepared to factor that in the development, and you got the equipment there to pull it out. So if you don't get it done, you're not going to know. It's the most unknown part of building, whether it's development or building a house, is in that ground, and that's where generally anyone lose that money. And you think about it, if you're starting a development, oh look at him.
I touched on that point, eh? Hey, maybe I am a builder after all.
There he is.
Hey, JSH, the plugs there.
It's good on you.
Geotech report, Ryan Bultitude, he knows a few things.
So you can understand, like if you go into doing a decent development, you're digging out the basement, and it's the start of the development. You've got development finance. So generally, development finance will be based over a period, and you only pay interest on what you borrow, and then generally there's a rule of thumb, you times of 0.65 or whatever, and that leaves you roughly around the middle of what you'll pay the whole time. And you say allowed $500,000 for the ground, and that's the first thing you're doing. So you've got 14 more months or 16 more months of doing this development, and then you dig the ground out, and it goes up $500,000. So then you're paying $1 million, and you're paying interest on that $1 million from the start of the development. It's not like something blew out at the end. It blew out at the start, so that means you're going to pay interest on that blowout in the ground for 16 months. So that $500,000 becomes $750,000. So it's important.
That's very important.
Get the ground right.
I'm glad I asked that question. Okay, so we've gone over sun, we've gone over shape, we've gone over privacy,
location.
We've gone over earth under the grass. Is there anything else we need to talk about, we need to cover in this location assessment to make sure it works, to make sure you get a good return, to make sure your feasibility stacks up?
What have the other houses sold for when they're finished around that in that location?
Good point.
Number one, then when you start looking at like the end product, can I create a home that will attract that number that I'm trying to achieve on the end sale? Hugely important, because people are going to refer to those sales in that street.
Yeah.
McGee was different because the next house that is sold in McGee was half of that price. That's why I always say that you can create your own market, create the right product. But yeah, if you've got sales that aren't reflecting what you want to do, you need to create something really, really cool, really, really completely different to what everyone else has got on the street. So you can say, well, this is why everyone's going to sell for that. Not because that one sold for $2 a mil or two less. The design wasn't there, So you need to look at what sales have happened in the last years. In that street.
That's it. That's something I want to touch on, because you did that comparison. I remember, with McGee, and you did the comparison and you said, really bare minimum, this is the feasibility within it. And then you knocked that out of the park and hit the record, right? But before you hit the record, before you knocked it out of the park, you still did the comparison on bare minimums.
I always do everything on bare minimums. I think I did it on 5.5. That means you're going to, walk away with some money.
Yes.
And anything under that, you're starting getting, there's no fat, and you're starting to get into the red zone.
Yes.
So, but then the value was like, well, no one's sold one for 5.5 that's not on the water.
And Justin, what did you sell it on for?
7.
7? Was that the record of the street?
And he said no, and I thought people thought I was crazy, and then we did 7. So yeah, it's definitely the non-waterfront record.
Yeah. Good stuff, mate. Well done. All right, so just do a quick recap of those 5. One more, because it was 5, ironically. What were the 5? What are the 5 golden strategies?
But the location, like where the site is, like based on the street, privacy, sun, shape of the block, and you brought up what's under the ground.
Give it a better word.
Get a geotech report.
And the final one, comparison.
Yeah, comparisons for end sales.
Market comparison.
And that's very, very important because you don't want to be trying to develop a $4 million house in a $1 million street.
At the start of this session, you said, how are we going to talk so long about location, mate? I think you've done a fabulous job. Andrew, how
5 minutes in.
We're only 5 minutes in. How long have we been going for?
You're not in the flow.
40 minutes?
Time's going slow.
And I quote, you said to me the last session, 40, 45 minutes, that's where we want to be. Like that's a good time frame.
We must be in the flow.
Look at him.
Read a book about flow.
You are so in flow. Like for a bit of this session, you took the silhouette of like a god of developing, mate. So I've loved it. Okay, so that was a cracker session. Really appreciate how we framed it up. And
it gets through and helps everyone.
I think it will.
They get too scared about the daunting part, but
acknowledge it.
If you want to take anything on in life, the risk is always going to outweigh the gain.
Yeah. So 5 key principles, which I won't get Justin to repeat again. I'm not gonna do it again. But 5 key principles. These will stop you being in pain, like Justin expressed. They will help you be in a good state of fulfillment when you're knocking these developments off. And Justin, like I always love doing with you, mate, what are we going to be talking the next session?
Probably site acquisition.
Site acquisition. How easy was that? The last one was a struggle with this.
If you want to go through the flow, site acquisition.
The flow.
What you've got to do.
Find the flow.
Yeah, what you've got to do, what the steps and the processes are for site acquisition. So you found the site. Okay, what's happening now? Yeah, what are we going to do to, I guess, settlement? That sounds pretty cool, though.
Can I extract a bit more out of site acquisition? Really sell it. Sell me site acquisition.
Well, site acquisition, we'll go through, obviously, you found the site, bit of design. There's going to be a few things in site acquisition because it all evolves around. So it's going to be a bit of design. It's going to be, obviously, finance and funding, feasibilities. That'll be first, feasibilities, profit return, and probably consultants.
That's a pretty big spectrum, mate. Are we going to need
I need 4 hours for that one, or 10 minutes.
Okay, so maybe we split that into even 2, site acquisition, or even 3.
Yeah.
Okay, site acquisition. What's site acquisition?
No, we'll see if we can get an agent in who might be able to help us talk about site acquisition.
Oh, you've seeded it now, mate. You've got a producer. That's right. There's someone that may be able to come into this next session around site acquisition.
The second one after that section.
Don't backtrack, mate. You committed to it. Let's rock and roll. Hey, let the flow state flow. All right, guys. Great session. That was amazing. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, mate.
You couldn't have got better if you tried. Awesome.